Joining me now on Skype to talk more about President Trump's list of potential Supreme Court nominees is John Malcolm, Vice President of the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation. John, welcome back. Thanks so much for coming on. I know that you know this process well. Back in 2016, you compiled a list of potential Supreme Court nominees to succeed, that is, Justice Scalia, and nearly all of your recommendations ended up making the White House list of nominees. What's your initial impressions of those listed to fill a potential vacancy on the high court, and what are some of the characteristics that they share?
Sure. Well, I was very pleased by the list and impressed by it, and delighted to see that the last name on my original list that he had not included got added. And so actually 5 names, four of whom I recently recommended, made it onto the president's list. And I think that these are excellent people. I don't know all of them. I watched that blockbuster speech by Daniel Cameron, the Kentucky Attorney General. There's a Third Circuit judge, Peter Phipps, whom I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to start studying their records. I was surprised that 3 senators were put on the list. So the president had previously only put on the list sitting judges, with the exception of Senator Mike Lee. He's obviously now added not only Paul Clement, who was on my original list, but Noel Francisco, Daniel Cameron, the 3 senators whom you mentioned. So he's broadened the aperture of the types of candidates that he is on this list, are a bit better known by social conservatives and not so much focused on things like expressing concern or criticism of the power of executive branch agencies. So there was a bit of a nod towards social conservatives. But these are some very, very well-qualified men and women.
You mentioned Paul Clement, one of your original choices. Let's talk about him a little bit more. And he has been added to the president's updated list, as you mentioned. What makes him a strong candidate? Well,
he's the preeminent Supreme Court litigator in the country. Paul has argued over 100 cases before the high court and dozens, if not hundreds, before the lower federal courts of appeals on a whole slew of issues. Anybody who's ever watched him in court knows that he is a brilliant advocate with a keen mind. He's also a superb writer. I mean, his briefs are a pleasure to read. And I have no doubt that if he was an associate justice, that he would bring that keen mind and that rather sparkling writing quality to bear. He would be an outstanding justice. He's just getting added now, but I would note that Justice Gorsuch was not on the original list by President Trump. He made it to the 2nd iteration. Brett Kavanaugh made it to the 3rd iteration, and now they are both justices on the Supreme Court. So the same thing could happen to Paul Clement, and I, for one, would be very pleased by that.
Were there any picks that surprised you?
Yeah, I was surprised to see 3 senators on there. Not that there's anything wrong with them. So Josh Hawley, who granted has said he's not interested, clerk for Chief Justice Roberts, Senator Cruz, clerk for Chief Justice William Rehnquist. Tom Cotton didn't clerk for Supreme Court Justice, but he clerked for Judge Jerry Smith on the 5th Circuit. These are 3 very smart individuals who clearly know a lot about and care a lot about the Constitution. Daniel Cameron, certainly very, very young, but shows a lot of promise. After he gave his speech, I remember turning to some friends next to me who watched it and said, well, there's a guy who's got a future. Well, part of that future now involves being on the Supreme Court list. But, he's very young. He's 34. Allison Rushing, who is whip smart on the 4th Circuit. She wasn't on my list, but I was delighted to see her name is only 38, but she clerked for a number of great judges, including Justice Thomas. And if their time hasn't come now, I certainly hope that perhaps their time will come at some point in the future, perhaps during a 2nd Trump term.
Well, John, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your time and your insight. John Malcolm, Vice President of the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation. Thanks again.
Good to be with you.